Thanks a lot to EMED because just a few minutes ago I was explaining that I started my research 8 years ago about the externalization of migration and about irregular migration in the Mediterranean for a project here at the EMED. So this is why it's curious that like 8 years later I found myself here as a PhD, as a doctor already, when at that time I was just starting my degree in political science. Also, I would like to say thanks to the GRITIM-UPF and to Dirk Gebhardt that is not here today. I would like today to compare the three main routes, the three main doors from where irregular migrants and refugees reach Europe, which is from Morocco, from Libya, and from Turkey. And somehow I would like to contribute to sort of a discussion that is taking place since last summer, which is between those that talk about externalization of migration and that said that the EU pressures North African countries to cooperate, and a minority of scholars that before the refugee crisis was already saying that sometimes these North African countries also have their own tools to bargain with against the EU, and that sometimes instrumentalize migration to obtain more bargaining power. In fact, when last summer, in 2015, not this summer, sorry, so many refugees were arriving to Greece, the EU was surprised, and many EU scholars didn't know what to do and could not understand also, for example, the EUTurkey deal and how it was possible that Turkey was so powerful and even obtained somehow, as I will explain later, important benefits for his support in the cooperation on migration control. And so somehow I will explain the three routes and try to explain at the same time what are the terms and factors that explain a migration control cooperation between two countries, a EU member state and a North African country. And I will try to demonstrate also that these countries sometimes instrumentalize migration and get empowered by the use of irregular migration. At the same time, I want also to finally explain how the EU capacity to control migration, to stop migration, depends directly on these countries, and that somehow without them, Fortress Europe would not exist. So, to start with the first case, the Italian-Libya case, its context is interesting because, well, Lampedusa, the small island of Lampedusa, which is it's a small island of no more than 14 kilometers from one side to the other. It's like possible to even walk it from one side to the other in less than 3-4 hours. It's situated 250 kilometers from the north of Libya and more or less 200 kilometers from Tunisia. The evolution of arrivals from mostly Libya to Italy changed over the years, as you can see in this graph. But even if today, and this is also somehow paradoxical and interesting to see, even if today we can see that the number of arrivals, more or less, is between 150,000 to 170,000 in 2014, it's curious that at the beginning of the 2000s, the Italian government and the EU was really demanding, requesting the Libyan leader Muammar el-Gaddafi to cooperate on migration control to stop the irregular migration flows, even if the number of arrivals were no more than 40,000 per year. To see somehow, well, it's later we can discuss about what, how can we define the EU dependency on these countries, and if it's something psychological, if it's something created, provoked by the media, by our fears, or well, or if it has another type of based. But the thing is that from 2002 to 2006, Berlusconi met several times the Gaddafi, and in order to convince him to stop irregular migration, gave him several agreements, several benefits in exchange. But also what is important is that Gaddafi was good enough in bargaining by linking oil, as you might know already, with irregular migration control. This is why somehow the EU decided in 2004 to lift the arms embargo on Libya, and at the same time, in 2004, in October 2004, the longest pipeline, subterranean pipeline from Libya to Sicily was inaugurated, and it was a deal between Italian oil company and a Libyan oil company. But to see to what extent the link between oil and irregular migration existed at that time is that the same week that this pipeline was inaugurated, Libya, Gaddafi, deported 5,000 irregular migrants to Niger, which was the first time that Gaddafi was deporting so many migrants to another country. However, as you can see, more or less, even if this cooperation existed, the numbers even increased till 40,000 in 2008. So this is why Berlusconi decided to meet several times Gaddafi again, even allowed him to, he invited Gaddafi to Rome and to put his Haima in one of the main squares of Rome. And in exchange for his cooperation, they signed this Treaty on Friendship, Partnership and Cooperation, which was not only based on irregular migration control, but it was linked to agreements on science, culture, economy, and energy. But also, the thing is that Italy even apologized Libya for its 30-year occupation, even if it ended in 1943, and announced that it was going to pay 5 billion over 25 years for such occupation. Among these 5 billion, there was 2,000 million just in infrastructure projects, which was one of them included highway from Tripoli to Egypt, and 5,000 million was on electronic monitoring devices to control the Libyan coast. And as you can see, the numbers decreased from 39,000 to 4,000. But also because the friendship was so amazing at the time that, that Gaddafi allowed Italian patrols to control somehow Libyan waters, and to, even if sometimes irregular migrants were apprehended in high seas, in several cases, several thousands were deported to Libyan waters after that. Of course, well, the consequences of such cooperation was also quite tragic. There were tortures and violation of human rights that still exist today, because even if today there's somehow incredible instability in Libya, many detention centers in Libya still exist and are still operating by both governments. And this is more or less the map that I think it was International Amnesty created, situating all the detention centers or jails that some were built by Gaddafi, but also others have been, has been demonstrated that even the Italian government was paying and building them. However, after the Arab Spring in 2011, the numbers of arrivals increased because there was no government to cooperate with, which demonstrates this dependence. If a neighbor country is unstable, there's no police and no border guards to control these flows. And then is when the Mare Nostrum operation and then the Triton operation were implemented, first till almost the Libyan waters, which was somehow a rescue operation, but then because the Italian government was not able to continue to save and to spend so much money per month, as we can see here, there was a comparison between the two operations. One was from October 2013 to October 2014, 1 year, and Triton started in 2014 till 2015. What is quite, well, tragic somehow is that the Mare Nostrum was implemented just by the Italian government, and as you can see, this is more or less all the ships and planes that were trying to rescue these migrants, while 1 year later, the 28 at that time were not even able to spend the 9 millions that Italy was spending each month, but only 3 million, and even just 1/3 of all the ships that Italy used. Today, this is why also, because in the two Libyan governments are not allowing the EU to trespass the Libyan waters. Tragically, today, many traffickers just give oil somehow, the gas to these migrants. They put them on vessels with the gas enough to reach the 30 miles till they arrive to the high seas, and then once they reach the high seas, they have a satellite phone to which they have to call the Guardia Costera Italiana, which sometimes is situated in Rome, which sends a boat of the Italian Coast Guards, or, as you might know, Médecins Sans Frontières and some NGOs are also operating in the high seas in order to save many of these migrants. But in case you want to know why there's no, it's not possible to reduce the number of arrivals, it's as easy as to understand that both Libyan governments don't accept the EU to enter into Libyan waters, as Berlusconi was allowed before. So, in order to, after explaining briefly this case, the Spanish-Morocco case, well, as Juan Carlos explained before, is the case in which was based my thesis, and as also he said, it was trying to understand how the cooperation between the two countries was built in 25 years, and why today also the EU considers the Moroccan case a model to which the EU and the other EU members should get inspired. And first of all, what is interesting of this case is that it doesn't have only one route from which to reach the EU or a EU member state, but several, because Spain has several territories in the north of Morocco. Some of them, like this one, which is a very small island, the Tierra Island. As you can see, this beach, this is Morocco, and this is Spain. Even a kid is able to swim and reach this Spanish territory. And this is why somehow Morocco has been able to use each one of its islands, of the Spanish islands in front, or Spanish territories in front or in Morocco, as a bargaining tool to obtain more benefits, or symbolic benefits. So, well, as the main route from Morocco to Spain is to take a patera, a small boat of no more than 15 people. The distance between the north of Morocco to the south of Spain in the Strait of Gibraltar is no more than 14 kilometers, and at the same time the territorial waters there are not clearly delimited, so this is why sometimes some of the migrants take even these toy boats that you can use on the beach with a capacity of only 1 or 2 people, and they go to a supermarket, spend no more than 20 or 50 euros, and they just have to try to reach a few miles, 2-3 miles, and then they call the Guardia Civil to be rescued. The second route from Morocco to Spain that migrants use is Ceuta and Melilla, the two cities situated in the north of Morocco, with this triple fence of 6 meters high, which is quite complex and difficult to jump, not only because it's triple and it has barbed wire, riser on the top, but also because Moroccan gendarmerie is situated on the bottom in order to stop them to try to reach the Spanish territory. And the third one was first before 2006. It was from the south of Morocco to the Canary Islands, but then when the cooperation, when Morocco started cooperating there in 2004, the irregular migrants decided to start reaching the Canary Islands from the north of Mauritania, or sometimes even from Senegal, to Canary Islands in cayucos, which are big boats usually used to for fisheries issues. But the main thing is that the distance between the north of Mauritania to the Canary Islands is more or less between, I think it's 1,500 kilometers, which is, quite a journey. Here, as you can see, by looking at this graph, it's more or less, it's quite complicated to understand how the cooperation was built, but then this is why it's more important to go route by route. Here, as you can see, from 2002 is when 2002-2003 is when the number of irregular migrants started to decrease till 3,000 in 2013, because one of the main events that sometimes are omitted when scholars study the Spanish-Moroccan cooperation on migration control is the Perejil Islet conflict, which you might not know, but it happened in July 2002, and in one of these islets that similar to the one I just showed you previously, the Moroccan king or the Moroccan authorities decided to situate 6 gendarmes in this islet, somehow to claim that this little island was not Spanish but Moroccan. This obviously provoked a bilateral and diplomatical conflict, which I don't want to explain too much, but somehow ended with Colin Powell being a mediator and provoked somehow almost a small war between the two countries, although it was only symbolical. Nothing happened in the end, but the most important part of this conflict is that all the bilateral agenda and all the bilateral relation between the two countries changed. In the sense that since 2002 and since the Perejil Islet conflict, Spain changed its position on the Western Sahara issue. Also stopped making certain declarations on the sovereignty of Ceuta and Melilla, and at the same time stopped criticizing criticizing Morocco for not cooperating enough on irregular migration control. Somehow the discourse completely changed, and since 2002, and then with the arrival of President Zapatero in 2004, the whole policy, the foreign policy of Spain towards Morocco changed, with more investment, more aid for cooperation, and at the same time, the Spanish position on the Western Sahara issue changed from a neutral position to a more pro-Moroccan position. Because of this change, Morocco began cooperating continuously, day after day, and in all 3 routes. This is also the number of arrivals from the Western Sahara to the Canary Islands, although the important part of this graph is that the cooperation of Morocco started in 2004 and, as you can see, decreased, but this is why then, because also the North Mediterranean route was somehow closed, sub-Saharan migrants decided to try to reach the Canary Islands from Senegal and Mauritania, and this is why it increased till 30,000 in 2006, till again the Spanish government signed several agreements with the sub-Saharan countries to stop irregular migration. So somehow, as I was explaining before, the Spanish-Moroccan case has needed almost more than 15 years of cooperation, of exchanges, of bargaining between the two countries, and the important aspect here, in order to maybe discuss it later, is that every single main issue of the bilateral relation between Spain and Morocco is linked to irregular migration, directly or indirectly. The Ceuta and Melilla and the Spanish Islets, which is territories that Morocco claims, are one of the destination points, and therefore every time somehow there is a number of arrivals in these two cities, the topic is already on the table and therefore on the agenda. Again, the Western Sahara, Spain had to recognize Morocco, the recognition, and Spain allowed Morocco somehow to control the coast of the Western Sahara in order to control migration. Before, Morocco didn't have the support and the recognition of Spain to do that. Agriculture or trade agreements have many times been the same time that Spain was asking Morocco to cooperate on migration control, Morocco was responding, not if you don't agree on the deal about tomatoes, for example, or the same on fisheries agreements. The fisheries agreements, Spain needs the Western Sahara coast and grounds to fish there because of technical issues, and the Moroccan authorities managed to somehow link the negotiations on these fisheries agreements with migration control. Because of this issue linkage strategy, the Spain dependency on Morocco has increased, but also then it proves that Morocco is not a non-subordinated partner. It's not a gendarme of Europe that cooperates easily, just if you ask for it. And if we compare today, or if we compare the situation of Morocco in the 90s with the situation of Morocco today, it has drastically changed. And migration control has given a better reputation to Morocco, more recognition internationally, more credibility. And when the Arab Spring took place, many EU governments immediately supported the constitutional reform that the Moroccan king proposed. Somehow, because we have to understand the fear that the EU has on a migratory crisis, like it happened in Tunisia and Libya also in 2011. And therefore, this proves that EU governments prefer to support a small reform than to have a big crisis in its neighborhoods. At the same time, now I would like to prove a case of instrumentalization of migration, and in order to understand it easily how a country instrumentalized migration, I always use this picture. As you can see, this is the Moroccan king doing what? Jet ski. And he was, in August 2014, he was doing jet ski and he was using his yacht in the Strait of Gibraltar. But the problem was, this happened, if I'm not wrong, I will check later, the 7th of August 2014. And what happened is that, what happened is that suddenly from the 9th of August till the 11th of August 2014, more than 1,200 migrants arrived from the north of Morocco to Spain. It was on the media, as you can see. This is the small graph just there, where we can see the comparison of these only 48 hours. By the way, only in 2014, only 2,500 migrants arrived from the north of Morocco to Spain. However, as I said, 2,500 in 1 year, of which half of it arrived only 48 hours. The explanation of that, again, is this picture, and the problem was that the 7th of August, when he was doing his jet ski, a boat of the Guardia Civil arrived and asked for the documents of the people and the family that was in this yacht. The bodyguards of the Moroccan king say to these two Guardia Civils, "What are you doing? Don't you recognize this is the yacht of the Moroccan king?" The Guardia Civils insisted, till with his perfect Spanish, the Moroccan king intervened, and then they recognized him, and the Guardia Civil ran away. The problem is that, and this is hard to prove, but you can go right now on Google and look on several newspapers that several months later explain this story. Of course, we were not scholars, journalists, everybody was surprised at that time and could not explain the reasons of this incredible number of arrivals. But apparently the Moroccan king called immediately the Spanish king and complained or more. The Spanish king criticized and yelled at the Internal Affairs Spanish ministry. But still, the 9th of August, in order to explain, to express how mad he was, he used these 1,200 migrants. At the same time, there are some journalists that in Morocco have also, they wrote some articles explaining that some Moroccan gendarmes were in Tanger, in the main squares, saying to the sub-Saharans, you have 48 hours, you have 48 hours to go to Spain. Therefore, in order to just finish with this case, I think somehow that scholars and everybody, instead of just using labels about externalization of migration, fortress, Europe, etc., sometimes we have to try to understand how this cooperation is built, and to understand that there is a bargaining process with bilateral issues, multilateral, geopolitical, and that each part uses its bargaining tools, sometimes issue linkage, sometimes instrumentalization of migration, and that, well, this is important also to understand how the case of Morocco, we can see that today Morocco has obtained the advanced status, has support, and even on the Western Sahara issue, if you do a comparison of how was the situation 10 years ago and today, you can see that every year or every 5 years, Morocco has more support in his side for his purposes. The third case I would like to explain is the EU-Greece Turkey case. And compared to the Spanish-Moroccan case, it's quite different because, in fact, because of bilateral tensions and problems between the two sides, there has never been an important cooperation between the two countries. In the Spanish-Moroccan case, there are joint patrols. There are meetings between the Moroccan Gendarmerie and the Spanish Guardia Civil almost every week in almost the three routes on the Western Sahara, on the Ceuta, Melilla, and other issues. So somehow all these cooperations and meetings create an embedded bilateralism and a strong cooperation which cannot be broken easily. But Turkey has had the power to say no to Greece and to the EU, and even if a readmission agreement was signed in 2002 between Greece and Turkey, Turkey claimed limited resources and not enough human resources to be able to control and to readmit all these migrants. This is why Turkey said to Greece that he was going to accept only those migrants trying to cross the land border between Greece and Turkey, but not those that were reaching the Greek islands. This is important also to explain and to understand why, the refugee crisis that happened in 2015. In order also to stop the number of irregular migrants reaching reaching Greece, Greece decided to build a small, not so high fence compared to the Ceuta and Melilla fence in the Evros, all along the Evros River. But as you know, by August 2015, almost 2.5 million refugees were registered in Turkey and were deciding, mostly for the Syrians, deciding if to come back to Syria, they were waiting to see if the war in Syria was going to stop or not, or they were deciding to go to Europe. This map we cannot really see the real routes going from Syria to Turkey, but the important aspect here is the complexity of this case is that almost half a dozen islands, Greek islands, are situated in no more than 12 kilometers from the Turkish shores, which complicates migration control, obviously. But this is why to Lesbos almost 500,000 arrived in 2015, and you can see the other islands also received an important number of refugees. But again, to try to understand instrumentalization and to try to understand again how much power maybe these neighbor countries have, I show the comparison of the number of arrivals from Libya to Italy between June and November 2015, and here you can see that in less than 4 days the number of refugees increased drastically from Turkey to Greece. This is based on a research I did a year ago, and which I tried to do a process tracing of the events that took place at that time, and in order to understand what happened and why so many refugees were arriving and why there was such an increase between the 4th of August to the 10th of August. And somehow the explanation I found is that the whole foreign policy of Turkey changed and the Turkish authorities decided completely to change its position on the Syrian conflict, but also on his regional position. Somehow, on the 5th of August, Turkey decided that even if before it has an open border policy towards Syrians, it decided to not give them labor rights, not to give education to their kids, and even if it promised that before, in less than a week, we can see that it changed and decided to announce this. But also several terrorist attacks happened in Turkey, and Turkey also decided or announced his intention to create a safe zone in Syria, where he said to Obama and to several public media that he was thinking to settle the 2.5 million of refugees in Turkey to this safe zone that at that time was controlled by ISIS in the north of Syria. In front of this context, no labor rights, no school for their kids, and the possibility to be sent to a zone controlled at that time by ISIS, many refugees decided to go to Greece. At the same time, if you were going to the main squares of Izmir and to the touristic cities, Turkish cities in front of these islands, you could see that smugglers and traffickers could operate without no control at all of the Turkish police. So this is why Turkey decided not to do anything on that. The consequence in the end, as you might know, was the EU-Turkey deal signed in reached the 18th and 20th of March 2016 after a long process of negotiation. The deal was that, all new irregular migrants crossing from Turkey to the Greek islands were going to be returned to Turkey. This has not really taken place. A few hundreds have been deported, but no more than 1,000. But here it's also important to understand that Turkey obtained the promise of the EU that the EU was going to disburse 3 billion on the first time, and then by the end of 2018, 3 more billions to help these refugees in Turkey. But it's also interesting to see that after almost 5 to 10 years of accession negotiations completely blocked between the two sides, the Chapter 33 was open, and a few others have been open too, even if it hasn't been clear on the media till now. In order also to prove again somehow the instrumentalization, is that the first meeting between the EU, or the main meeting between the EU and Turkey that took place in October, as you can see, is when Tusk, the president of the European Parliament, Martin Schulz, the president of the European Commission, Juncker, and Donald Tusk, the president of the European Council, decided to meet with Erdogan the 4th of October, and there is when they promised him for the first time visa liberalization, the opening of several chapters of accession negotiations, but also at that time what they promised is only 1 billion euros to maintain the refugees in Turkey. However, if in October it was only 1 billion, what is interesting when we see the number of arrivals to Lesbos, the main island where refugees were trying to reach Greece, is that, for example, in the 10th of February, as you can see here, that it was just that these 4 or 5 days, 0 arrivals to Lesbos, is when Erdogan said, on the one hand, that he could open the borders if the EU didn't want to give more money. And then the 19th is when and the 10th also Erdogan asked for at least 3 billion euros for the maintenance, for the safety of these refugees in Turkey. So somehow, as you can see, in this case, it was not the instrumentalization of irregular migrants, but the instrumentalization of migration migration control, proving that he has the power to stop totally the flows of arrivals. Finally, again, as you can see, the 18th of March is when the deal was signed, and we can see that before, sometimes even 1,000 or more were arriving, while since the 20th of March, it has never been more than 500. Okay, so how much we have? Yes, we're okay? Okay. So in order to to create a bit of debate, or if you want to discuss the 3 cases a bit later, I think that what we have to learn from these 3 cases is that, well, migration control cannot be analyzed only from the point of view of the EU, and that we can also take into account bilateral relations, which are very important. As you can see, the friendship of Berlusconi and Gaddafi decided, the destiny of many irregular migrants, or the decision of Zapatero to be more friendly with the Moroccan king, but also that it's important to understand the interdependence, the strategies of the neighboring countries, and to understand how much power they can have and how the EU is dependent on them. Somehow in the 3 cases we can see that by using regular migration, these countries have obtained substantial benefits, and even they got quite empowered economically, politically, at the international level. And therefore, in order to study these cases, we have to take into account that leverage and pressure strategies are not only unidirectional, but from both sides. That is a bargaining process, a long bargaining process. Moreover, also we can see that each country uses the bargaining chips, the resources that it has. Morocco has sovereignty disputes, like Ceuta and Melilla or the Western Sahara, while Libya was using energy and oil to create this issue linkage strategy. Finally, what I think we have some more time to talk a bit, and maybe I think it will be interesting. In order to close the loop of the whole Mediterranean, I would like to share one of my last research I did a few months ago, which was to go to the Western Balkans, to Idomeni, to the refugee camp of Idomeni before it was dismantled. And it was also interesting because, well, as you can see, the trip was driving from Florence to Greece, And the goal of this research was, on the one hand, to compare the differences of refugee camps all along the Western Balkan route, if the refugees were better treated in Slovenia or not, or in the other countries. And also on the media, it was informed that the whole Western Balkans were fortified, that each country was building fences, and therefore the goal of my research was to compare the fortification measures that each country implemented. Well, these are some of the pictures I took on this trip. This was one of the refugee camps near Idomeni, just 10 kilometers near the Fyrom, the Macedonian border. This was Idomeni, just one side. In fact, this camp, there were 10,000 refugees just waiting there and hoping that the fence, that the border was going to open sooner or later. Oops. And then, yeah, okay. So again, this I would like to just talk, for example, on another type of instrumentalization of irregular migrants, but from the other side. As you can see, this is the fence that separates Greece from Macedonia. It's no more than 1.5 meters high, and even if the Macedonian-Greek border is 200 kilometers or more, in fact, this fence, even if the media didn't know how long it was, some NGOs and after going by car from one side to the other, I discovered that it was only 20 kilometers, no more. In this case, again, what I could not understand before arriving there is that the Ceuta and Melilla fences I told you before, 6 meters, barbed riser on the top, almost impossible to jump, were climbed by these sub-Saharan migrants in groups of 200 people, more or less. Their strategy was to be big groups so that the Moroccan gendarmerie and the Spanish Guardia Civil, that only had 20 and 20 on each side of the border, were sometimes stopping them, but their strategy was the more, the better, and the more probabilities we have. However, in Idomeni, it was 10,000 people, and they were not capable to jump this fence. That was I was puzzled by this question, by this reality when I was reading the media, but in fact, the answer was that in Idomeni, you could barely see young people young people, because all of them were families. And the thing is that the Macedonian government and the EU lately, is what I saw in a study, is that they instrumentalize the families that were waiting there. In other words, they were instrumentalizing pictures, they were using pictures of these families, them stranded, and every time the word stranded and the pictures were on the media, potential migrants in Turkey and in Pakistan and Afghanistan were thinking it twice before crossing all these countries, Turkey, and then taking a boat to reach Greece. So in this case, it was an instrumentalization of families of irregular refugees, but in order to convince potential migrants not to reach Greece. This was one gas station that turned into a refugee camp, literally. 2,000, 3,000 refugees were there. The difference between Idomeni and this gas station is that, well, they had proper bathrooms. They could sometimes use the bathroom of the gas station, and they didn't have to deal with the mud because, in this region, in this part of Greece, and mainly in April, it rains, and there are, it's quite some storms, and of course, many tents were underwater after a night of rain. I would like to maybe explain, but it would be too long. The thing is that, again, as I said, the fence also of Macedonia and Greece, as I said, was 1.5 meters. But what was even more tragic or paradoxical is that when I went to the Slovenian-Croatian border, even if on the media they said that this border was fortified, when I reached that border, I saw that there was just a barbed wire, a riser of 1 meter tall, no more, easy to jump for anybody, even for a kid. However, by announcing on the media, again, that this border was fortified, the Slovenian government was seeking to convince potential migrants not to get there. Yes, and that's it. Well, this is the camp of Idomeni dismantled. It's hard to believe, but all this image was full of tents. And here is where today, right now, the families I met and that gave me a tent for a week to live with them for a week, this is where they have been resettled. It's managed by the Greek army, but apparently, this is where they live, and the health situation is quite complicated, and they have been there since the end of May, if I'm not wrong, waiting for an answer, waiting for something, for knowing if they could go to the EU or to go back. However, right now there's more than 60,000 refugees totally stranded in the